round two, I suppose, of the tariffs saga. Last time around, we came out of it with, 10% broadly on most products and 25% tariffs on steel. This time around, it's rather different, isn't it? Donald Trump is wielding threats of tariffs against a number of NATO countries, including the UK, simply because of their position on Greenland, something that the Prime Minister reiterated this morning is not and will not be up for grabs. In that press conference he gave earlier on this morning, the Prime Minister said alliances only work if they're built on respect.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. That right is fundamental, and we support it. Denmark is a close ally of the United Kingdom and of the United States, a proud NATO member that has stood shoulder to shoulder with us, including at real human cost in recent decades. Alliances endure because they're built on respect and partnership, not pressure. That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong. It is not the right way to resolve differences within an alliance. Nor is it helpful to frame efforts to strengthen Greenland's security as a justification for economic pressure. Such measures hurt British workers, British businesses, and the British economy. And that is why I've been so clear on this issue. A trade war is in no one's interest. And my job is always to act in the UK's national interest.
Well, what if that last bit ends up clashing with the Greenland commitment? We could get to that point. The UK could get to that point. Marco Forgione joins me, Director General at the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade. And we'll hear in a moment from Professor Christopher Alden as well, the Director of LSE Ideas. Marco Forgione, first of all, tell me what you've been sort of concluding from what we've heard today and over the weekend from Donald Trump.
Well, Sheila, I think you can tell both from the tone and the content of the Prime Minister's speech today just how precarious the situation is currently. I think President Trump was emboldened by the Liberation Day tariffs last year, and he is very muscularly attempting to unpick the global multilateral system. Feels that he's got now almost free rein to exert US preeminence, particularly to the Western Hemisphere. And that puts the UK in a really difficult situation, a really challenging position to try and leverage both Keir Starmer's personal relationship and the UK's long-standing relationship with the US and try and broker a deal between us, the US, and the EU. And it's certainly not going to be simple. And as you've just highlighted, there's no guarantee that this ends with Greenland having its own view and decision-making on its future.
It's interesting that you connect this right back to the Liberation Day tariffs. You think they are connected to you, that there was always a plan for more when the opportunity arose, and Greenland has, and the EU's response to Greenland has been the opportunity, has provided that opportunity.
Yes, President Trump very clearly has set about to use trade and trade relationships as a powerful lever in its geopolitical ambitions. In November, they published the National Security Strategy, which sets out the principles and the approach that is going to be used by the US. And look, it's about transactional activity to the benefit of the US, the delivery of the America First agenda. So there is no tool that President Trump won't be prepared to use to exert pressure to get what he wants. I thought it was very interesting, actually, in what the Prime Minister was saying today. On several occasions, he mentioned the UK's nuclear deterrent. And that does call into question whether President Trump is using Trident as a bargaining chip in the negotiations currently.
In what way would he be doing that?
Well, we leased Trident from the US. So is pressure being applied with regards to the continuing support for the UK's nuclear deterrent into the future? And like I say, that would align with the whole national security strategy and the America First agenda, and President Trump's personal belief in using every tool, every tactic possible to achieve what he perceives to be America's right and destiny.
And it was interesting to hear Nigel Farage speaking to our reporter Henry Riley saying, I'll have words, I think is how he put it, with the American administration. He didn't say directly with Donald Trump, but with the administration about these tariffs and about that, particularly on the tariffs rather than on Greenland. How weak or strong would the UK and the EU combined be in the face of Trump just saying, tough, I'm going to do it anyway? I mean, he was. I mentioned the Farage audio because in it he was talking about the dangers of America of being isolated from their own allies. Are there dangers of America being isolated by their own allies? Or can America go it alone?
Well, America has the possibility, but it is dependent on other nations, other countries, even above and beyond the so-called Western Hemisphere, which would be, Greenland, Canada, Central South America, and the
European
USA.
nations allowing them in to use bases and the like.
Yeah, so there is a requirement for the US to have allies, relationships, and partnerships above and beyond that Western Hemisphere, and it was clear in the national security strategy that Europe is seen as an ally and a partner. But we have to look at what President Trump has done. He's very willing to announce extreme positions or extreme actions, and then, as part of a negotiation, to row back. So I think there is a window now for those negotiations. I think the Prime Minister is doing exactly the right thing, not jumping around, making escalatory comments, but seeking to get a negotiation.
But these negotiations aren't just about percentages and tariffs, are they? In this instance, they're also about the sovereignty of Greenland.
Yes. It is about the sovereignty of Greenland, but it is driven primarily by a perception by President Trump of a security risk for the US. So I think the issue to be resolved is the security risk, and it's how do we address that? How can we address that? It would be the UK with the EU, the Danes and Greenland, to try and assure the US that the concerns they have are being taken seriously and action is being taken to support that security, the security concerns.
So you don't fall into... Yes?
Sorry.
No.
As I say, but we have to bear in mind, there is the potential that President Trump will act unilaterally. This is a high stakes game of poker that's being played, and President Trump is very willing to make a bid and to show power, but then back down and reach negotiated settlements. So as the Prime Minister highlighted, both in the tone and what he said today, these are indeed precarious times.